The Panasonic G9 has several settings in it that allow you to customize the burst functions of the camera. So you can either have it set up for mechanical shutter or electronic shutter. And then within electronic shutter, you can even have things like a pre-burst function, where it will buffer an image before you hit the shutter to make sure you capture the shot that you were trying to get. Let's teach you how to customize the burst 1 and burst 2 settings that are on the drive wheel. So at the top of the camera here, we have a drive wheel. And what you'll notice is that we have single shot, we have a number 1 burst, and a number 2 burst. The thinking here is that you can customize to maybe have number 1 be your pre-burst, or in my case, I use number 1 as mechanical shutter, and then number 2 could be your electronic shutter. So to customize these, we go into the camera's menu, select burst 1 settings or burst shot 2 settings. We're going to walk through number 1, and then we'll set up something different for number 2. So number 1, we have options at the very bottom for low, medium, and high. Those are mechanical shutter settings. We then have SH1 pre and SH2 pre. These are electronic settings for electronic shutter. And then we have SH1 and SH2. So for right now, we're going to set number 1 for burst to high mechanical shutter. And then we're not going to have TJ do anything, but we're just going to hit the button, and you can see that the shutter was actually working, and that was our high-speed burst. We're now going to customize burst shot 2. So we're going to first set this to 2. We're then going to go through what these different SH1, SH2 pre-settings do, and then how they differ from just SH1 and SH2. So starting at SH2, this is electronic shutter only. That's all we're going to have. When I half press the shutter, you're going to see an R50 that pops up right here in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. When you're in SH2, it's going to be very fast. It's going to try to dump 60 images in a second, or 50 images in 5/6 of a second. So we'll start the burst now, and we just emptied the buffer. That was 50 images in less than a second. SH1 is a much slower burst. Again, it's a 50 image burst. And you can see that right here as I half press the shutter, it tells me how many images I have. But see how much longer it takes in this electronic mode. So that was 50 images, and it took roughly 2.5 to 3 seconds to do that. Now we're into our pre-burst options. So SH2 will be our fastest pre-burst. It's going to try to dump 50 images in under a second. But what it does is that when I hold the shutter button down halfway, on SH2 pre, when I hold the shutter button down halfway, you'll see it just counted down from 50 to 26. Watch. That means there's 26 images that it'll capture after I hit the shutter button. It's going to capture the 24 images before I hit the shutter. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have TJ in just a second move his arms down. As his arms are coming down, I'm going to hit the shutter button, and we'll go back and you'll see I will have actually captured his hands above his head, even though I hit the shutter button after his hands have moved. So TJ, go ahead and move your hands. Now I hit the shutter. When we play back, look, I actually caught his hands above his head, even though I hit the shutter after his hands had moved. And you can see all the frames we got of that shot. Well, if I don't need 50 images in under a second, maybe I want a longer burst period, we have a pre-burst function called SH1 pre. This function allows us to only buffer about 8 images before I hit the shutter. So it's only going to store the first 8 before I hit the shutter, and then it's going to be a slower shot-to-shot burst. So TJ, move your hands now. Now I hit the shutter. You can see that took quite a bit longer for us to capture all of our images because it's about 2.5 seconds for 50 images. When we play the images back, see, I still got his hands over his head, even though I hit the shutter button after his hands had moved. And that's how you can customize burst 1 and burst 2, and that's what all of those different burst functions do for you.
Panasonic.